What happens when you pack your entire life into a 19-foot trailer, two kids, two dogs, and five cats, and no real plan?
No job waiting, no clear destination, just the road and a whole lot of uncertainty.
Today's story isn't just about a cross-country move. It's about what happens when life strips away your control.
And you're forced to figure out what actually matters.
Because sometimes the most important journeys don't look like progress at all. Every journey has a story, and every story has the power to heal. My story hasn't been ordinary. I was adopted. I'm a survivor of abuse and trauma, and I have more than a dozen siblings. That's just the beginning of my story. Life has taken me on a long and winding road of healing and personal growth, a journey that ultimately led me back to myself and the path I was meant to walk. Along the way, I discovered that stories have power, the power to connect us, to help us grow, and even to help us heal. This is Travel Time Stories with Shannon. Real journeys, real stories, and real healing. What happens when you pack your entire life into a 19-foot trailer, two kids, two dogs, and five cats, and no real plan?
No job waiting, no clear destination, just the road and a whole lot of uncertainty.
Today's story isn't just about a cross-country move. It's about what happens when life strips away your control.
And you're forced to figure out what actually matters.
Because sometimes the most important journeys don't look like progress at all. Welcome back to Travel Time Stories with Shannon, where we explore the journeys that shape us, not just where we go, but how those experiences change who we become.
And sometimes the most meaningful journeys aren't the ones that are perfectly planned. They're the ones that unfold one uncertain step at a time.
Today's conversation is one of those stories.
Today's guest is Chip Scholz. He is a storyteller, a craftsman, and author who describes himself simply as a man with a lathe, a pocket knife, and a few stories.
After a long career in business and coaching, Chip discovered that the most important lessons don't usually arrive in big dramatic moments. They show up quietly in everyday life.
And those reflections became the foundation of his book, Every Dog Has Its Day, a collection of thoughtful stories about life, craft, and the small decisions that shape who we become.
Chip, we're so glad you're here. Welcome to the show.
Oh, Shannon and Ann, thank you. It's a delight to be here.
So one of the stories that really stuck with us is your family's move from Los Angeles to North Carolina in a 19-foot travel trailer. There were two adults, two kids, two dogs, and five cats. That alone is a story in itself. But can you take us back to the beginning of that journey? What led to that decision?
Yeah,
And when you say there was not a plan, what does that actually look like?
long story short, I've moved around a lot in my life. I grew up in Chicago and lived in the South and got tired of living in the South and got moved west. And we were living in Los Angeles at the time. And I got laid off in May of '98 from my job as a lobbyist in California. And I called my wife and I said, well, I got the package. And she said, well, great. So what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know, but I don't want to do it here. And so we planned. We started building a house back in North Carolina. We decided to move to the Charlotte area, just outside of Charlotte. And we took about a year to build the house. And when it came time to go, we tried to figure out how we were going to get five cats and two dogs across country. And there was no good answer. You know, it was going to cost us like a couple of grand to ship the cats. And, you know, were they going to be there when we were going to be there? And maybe the dogs were going to go with us. And it wasn't two kids. Well, it was two kids to start. One of them went back home to LA when we got to Albuquerque. But three humans, two dogs and five cats. And so
My gosh.
Yeah, they're in a 19-foot travel trailer. So, I'd never done a travel trailer before. And if you've never done a travel trailer before, first mistake was I had a Toyota RAV4 at the time. And we went out and picked up the travel trailer in El Monte, California, and we had about a 45-minute drive home. And that trailer liked to kill us on the way because the RAV4 just wasn't a heavy enough vehicle and it wasn't set up for it. And so,
Right.
we realized that all of a sudden we had to get a new car. And so we, went down to the used car lot and found an Explorer that would take us and, had it all, changed the hitch out and everything else. And so we got that taken care of. Then on the day we were leaving, we took our dogs in to get groomed, and we had a Cocker Spaniel and a Boxer at the time. And the Boxer, I think the Boxer was about 10 years old at the time. And we took them in to get groomed, and during the day, the Boxer collapsed a couple of times.
Oh my gosh.
So before we left, we had to go find an emergency vet. And the emergency vet, he said the dog has cardiomyopathy, and so just keep him quiet, and he gave us some tranquilizers. Well, we found out since then that tranquilizers are the absolute worst thing you can give with a dog with cardiomyopathy, and I'll tell you how we know. And we had just decided to loaf our way across country, and so the first night we spent the night in Barstow, California, which is a interesting place to be. The next night we went in Flagstaff, Arizona, and I think we got to Vegas, and so we're in Vegas, and it's July. So it's about 120 degrees out, and we kept the air conditioning going. Yes, we kept the air conditioning going while we were going, and we had taken about a 5-hour ride in the meantime. So here's another one of those things that you learn. We had thought we were going to keep the cats in the car with us in cat carriers. And so we put the cat carriers in the back of the car, and we put 5 cats, and we drove with them, and they caterwauled the whole time. And we even had them drugged, and they caterwauled the whole time, and they're just screaming. So that part of the plan didn't work, and so we decided we were gonna get the trailer as cold as possible, and then drive for about 3 hours and put the cats in the back. Well, we get to Vegas, and one of the cats is under a sleeping bag in one of the beds and is damn near dead from the heat. We had to learn all about that. And by the way, when you get cats in a trailer, what they all did, and it was really amazing, is to see they would all cluster around the axle, where it wasn't bouncing so much. So they found the place that was the most stable. I thought that was really cool. Anyway, so we did that, and we went to Vegas. We spent a couple of days in Vegas and had a good time, kept the air conditioning going, took care of the dogs and the cats and everybody. And so we're on our way out, and we're going across the Hoover Dam, and I look back, and all of a sudden the Boxer is not doing well. I mean, it's lying there, and its tongue is hanging out to one side, and its lips have gone white, and I thought, oh my God, what's happened? Well, we had given it a tranquilizer, and again, the tranquilizer doesn't really do well with cardiomyopathy, and we thought we had lost her. And so we got to a place that we were able to get some water and get her. We called the emergency vet, and she pulled through, thank goodness. But my goodness, and she passed away about 6 months after we got to North Carolina, but she didn't pass away on the road, thank God.
Yes, definitely. That would have been worse.
Yeah.
Yeah,
really
yeah,
horrible.
yeah. So we just had all kinds of adventures. The driving a travel trailer is a unique experience. Leveling a travel trailer when you get to a campsite is a unique experience because it didn't have automatic levelers. We had to put things under the wheels and level it out. And cooking is an interesting proposition. I don't know if you ever remember the movie. Which is a Vacation with Chevy Chase. Yeah.
One of my
National
favorites.
Lampoon's Vacation.
We were the Griswolds, and that's the way we felt. Is we kept watching that movie because we were the Griswolds.
Chip, you've described that trip as Such a stretch of uncertainty, loss of control, and all of these small crises. What were some of those moments where things didn't go as expected, and how did your family handle that uncertainty together?
It was a great tenderizer because, we want to make everything certain, don't we? We want to
Yeah.
make everything certain.
Yeah.
We want to know what to believe in and how to believe. And when you're on the road like that, I mean, I think being on the road is fantastic. I really love it. Um, and when you're on the road like that, we had certain destinations in mind, but if we wanted to see the world's largest ball of twine, we found a way to see that, and it just it kept loosening us up. The other thing, while we were driving, and we didn't drive more than 3 or 4 hours any day, which was really good. But what we did is we listened to audiobooks, and this is back when audiobooks were books on tape. And I still remember there was a Sidney Sheldon book that we listened to, and I hope never to listen to another Sidney Sheldon book in my entire life. And Sidney Sheldon is trying to be steamy, and isn't he's kind of like softcore. Sidney Sheldon, that he writes this thing, and he said and he took her and she liked it. And the way it was defined on the audiobook is like, oh my God, I'm here with my daughter and my wife, and he took her and she liked it. And that became kind of a catchphrase for us over the years.
That's the
Jeez.
best. It's so embarrassing when your kids are with you and something like that happens.
Well, yeah, I mean, she was a grown ass kid when she was with us, so it wasn't like she was a toddler or anything. But
Gotcha.
yeah, it's still, it's one of those moments. There's all kinds of catchphrases that come from things like that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
You talk about liking road travel or road trips. I do as well. I mean, I grew up, back in the day when that's what you did for vacation is, your family took a road trip. And
Yeah.
we have so many catchphrases that came from our road trips. One of my favorite ones is my dad had went the wrong direction on a trip. And so it became, well, you never would have saw that if we hadn't come this way. So then every time somebody took a wrong turn, that was the phrase that was used every time.
Yeah. I mean, going back when I was a kid, my mom and dad would put boards over the back seat and put down cushions, and so it was just one big seat, and that was us in the back. I mean, good God, we could have gotten killed if we were. Yeah, seat belts weren't a thing back then, but
Right.
just some great times on the road, and those are great times. I think everybody needs to travel. Just to have to put up with your family for a week or 2 weeks is, it's good training.
Exactly. It makes some really
Definitely.
great memories that you never forget.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah. So, that was a month and a half on the road, and we saw some incredible things. We came through Oklahoma City just shortly after the Timothy McVeigh bombing, and
Oh, wow.
and saw the Mira Federal Building. And in fact, I was just in Oklahoma City a couple weeks ago, and went and visited the memorial. And it's so neat to see that years later when they did complete the memorial. But this was
Yep.
before the memorial was completed. We saw the Grand Canyon of Texas just outside of Amarillo, and it's funny. It's going back to the Grand Canyon. We actually went to the Grand Canyon, and it's funny. In 13 years of living in LA, we never went to the Grand Canyon. And so we
Wow.
went to the Grand Canyon. We drove up onto the North Rim. We looked out over, and we almost did the vacation thing. We kind of looked around and went, okay, we've seen it, and got back in the car and headed back to our campsite in Flagstaff.
Yeah. Well, we did the European version of National Lampoons a couple years ago. We went to Scotland, and Anne was driving, and they have many, many roundabouts and
Yeah.
that are many lanes long. And if you're not in the right lane to start with, like you have to circle around many times to get into the lane you need. And so as we're circling around, I looked at her and go, there's Big Ben. There's Big Ben again.
Oh, that's great. That is great.
Yeah. So that's our roundabout catchphrase right there.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so I felt like the Griswolds in that moment as we're circling the roundabout several times to get into the right lane to exit.
Yeah. There were a few of those that happened, so I'm just going to throw that out.
Exactly. So what do you think that trip taught you, Chip?
Well, it probably didn't teach me enough because there were lessons that I learned since then. It ain't a thing. That's really what it taught me. It ain't a thing. And as uptight as I was, because there were a lot of times when I was uptight, not knowing, we knew what our destination was, but not knowing what was here when we got here. We didn't have jobs. We didn't know
Right.
what we were going to do or how we were going to do it. And so there was a level of tension there that probably shouldn't have been. I think if we were to take that trip now, we would have a whole lot better time than we did then, just because I think that's a huge American tradition of uprooting and moving on. Most of the migration was westward. Our migration was eastward, and that really is it's a great American tradition of just moving on.
Maybe sometime that would be a fun thing to do, is take that trip again.
How many people actually go from ocean to ocean in America? I mean, how many people take that trip? And have you guys ever done that?
Nope.
No.
See, and so we dipped our feet in the Pacific in Santa Monica, California, and about a month later, we dipped our feet in the Atlantic in just outside of Charleston, South Carolina, and we saw everything. We saw everything from sea to shining sea. And, we only were on one road. We went I-40 all the way across the United States. But, you don't realize the breadth of the country until you take that kind of a trip. I remember, so my wife grew up in Rhode Island, and in Rhode Island, farms are just kind of these little patches of dirt that are in between the hills and that kind of stuff. You get to the Midwest, and I grew up in Chicago, and I went to school in Bloomington, which is mid-state, and there's miles and miles of nothing but cornfields. And just as far as the eye can see, and, maybe rolling hills, but they're all covered with corn. And I remember my wife, the first time I took her to Central Illinois, she was just amazed at how many miles and miles there were. You don't see that if you just fly into Chicago and take a look at Chicago, or fly into the coast or whatever,
Yeah, that is
that was the trip.
Love that.
Yeah, I think road trips are the only way that you can really get to know the area or state or whatever it is that you're visiting, is to do a road trip.
Yep.
The other thing is, whenever I go to a town, I do a lot of walking, and I travel quite a bit for business. In fact, next week I'm going to be in Salt Lake and San Antonio the week after that, and Dallas a couple of weeks after that, in LA. And I walk, and I walk a couple miles and see what the town is all about. And boy, you just pick up so much from walking.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's the best way to get around. You find all the little nooks and crannies and all the locals places, and it's just, you're right, it's the best way to see a town, I think.
Yep. So what's your favorite trip? What was the best trip that you've ever taken?
I think the best road trip that I've ever taken in my life was the last road trip that I took with my mother, and we drove from Tennessee to Branson, Missouri. And we kind of did like you're talking about with your trip. We just took our time, and if we saw, a big ball of twine that we wanted to see, we, exited and went and checked it out. And and that was the last road trip that I ever got to take with her. And I have so many memories from that trip. It was incredible. All the things that we got to see and do on the way.
Yeah. How about you, Ann?
Actually, when my dad, we came back from Germany, my dad was military. He took 60 days off, and we spent that time traveling Ohio, Yosemite, Wyoming. We went to West Virginia, Montana, you name it, North Dakota, South Dakota, and we did a lot of camping, right? And so some nights dinner was what you caught in the stream. So we did a lot of that, a lot of fish fry. Yeah. But it was beautiful country. And I didn't see cities as much as I enjoyed seeing the country part of it, you know.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That was awesome.
And I think overall, the best overall trip that I've ever taken in my lifetime was our trip a couple of years ago. Ann and I went to Scotland for 16 days and rented a car and just drove all over the whole
everywhere
and then even out into the little islands out in the Hebrides. So yeah, that was an amazing trip. We saw so much history and yeah, I got to see Rosalind Chapel. That's always been on my bucket list, and that was incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, it reminds me. So my mother moved from Atlanta, Georgia to Phoenix, Arizona, and she was going to start a new life, start a new job in Phoenix. And it was over Christmas break, between Christmas and New Year's. And, we had a really good trip. We were traveling along pretty easily, and we got to Van Horn, Texas. Don't ask me where Van Horn is, because it's out in the middle of, it's not the end of the world, but you can see it from there. And there was an ice storm, and the road was closed because of an ice storm. So everybody and their brother was looking for a place to stay in Van Horn, Texas. And let me tell you, there are not too many places in Van Horn, Texas. And so we found this place, this last place to stay, in the Deluxe Motel. How come things that are named Deluxe really are not? And
yeah,
we walked
to make it look good.
Tricky. Yeah.
And we walked into the room. My mother would not take her shoes off because she was worried about catching something from the carpet.
I don't blame her.
Yes, she didn't take a shower. She wouldn't, she barely brushed her teeth. It was the wild night. And wow, it was unexpected to stay in Van Horn, Texas that night.
Now I've got to look up where Van Horn, Texas is. So
yeah.
It sounds to me like it was West Texas or the Panhandle.
Oh yeah, it's probably West Texas, or it might be the Panhandle.
Yeah,
it's probably like I said, it's not the end of the earth, but you can see it from there.
Well, you also mentioned unexpected grace, which is a very powerful phrase. What did that look like during your trip?
One of the things that there's a acronym that I really enjoy, and it's TAG, TAG. It's treat everyone with respect, assume positive intent, and grant grace. Because we all need grace.
I like that.
Mm-hmm. And so
definitely.
one of the things that we had to do. And so I remember being into some campsite late at night. I didn't feel like leveling the trailer. And so, I just had everybody sleep the way it was. You're sleeping on an incline, and you're holding onto the edge of the bed just so you can stay in the goddamn bed. It took a lot of grace to be able to do that. Even the cats were falling out of bed. It was nutty.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. You've got to grant grace, and I was younger then. I was not as good at that as I've gotten to be. But yeah, because that's the other thing you learn is we fail all the time. Everything we do is a failure, and some of those failures are really simple. I mean, it could be I'm forgetting to put the top on the jar of ketchup, or something like that. Some of them are a little bit more permanent, like relationships, and some of the failures in being good to each other. But grace is how we get past that. It's how It's how my wife and I laugh at each other when we go to rearrange the dishwasher. You can
Yeah.
relate.
I could totally relate.
Yeah,
Oh,
because
yes,
she does it.
definitely.
And you learn really quickly that there's no right or wrong. It just is, and and we both have different ideas about it. And it's funny. We have a daughter that lives with us and keeps us honest. And she doesn't even bother with arranging the dishwasher. She says, "I'm just going to let you guys rearrange it."
He knows.
See, but I've learned the lesson that now I don't rearrange it anymore. If my husband or my son, who still lives with us, takes the time to put the stuff in the dishwasher, then I just say, thank you, and let it go.
Same. I do not
Yeah,
care.
yeah. Amen. Amen.
Yeah. So, do you think we rush through transitions too often?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And it's funny because in my work as a coach, people are always wanting to rush by transitions. They're saying things like, well, it happened for a reason, or I'll get over it, or whatever. Going back to the granting grace, the person we forget to grant grace to the most is ourselves. And
I
and
agree.
so, when it's time to grieve, it's time to grieve. When it's time to rejoice, it's time to rejoice, and you've got to give yourself the ability to say things, and learn things. My parents died really early. My dad was 51, my mom was 56. And so I was an orphan at 30. And, I would love to say that I tried to put up a strong front, but it was echoes that lasted for years. And actually, I was 27 days shy of the age when my mother died when I had the stroke. Because I always believed that I wasn't going to be able to live past them.
Yeah.
And so, you live a certain way when you live that way. And all of a
Hmm.
sudden I lived past my dad, and it's like, really? And so I got to do some different things, and that's important.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that about, I mean, it's not funny what happened, but that you mentioned it about your losing your parents when you're around 30 and becoming an orphan. That basically the same thing that happened to me. I was around that age when I lost both parents, and I had that same mental thing that you did with thinking, okay, when I get to that age, like I'm not going to make it past that age. So, I'm going to do everything I want to do now because I'm not going to make it past that age, and kind of like basically preparing that to not make it past that age. And then that day comes and you make it past to the next day and you're like, okay, now what? Because you weren't expecting to be there that
Right.
next day or whatever.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. So there's two important parts about that. It's being an orphan, and people don't get that unless they've lost
Yeah.
both parents.
Yeah.
Right.
And people say, "Oh, you're not an orphan." Well, yeah, technically that's the definition of being an orphan.
Yeah.
Without parents, that's being an orphan.
Mm-hmm.
And second of all, it's that you have that in your head that you're not going to live. And I've talked to a number of people that have lost parents early, and they all have the same experience,
Mm-hmm.
that they aren't going to live past that time. When it does, I mean, I'm now 14 years past when my parents died, and I thank God every day.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yep.
It's made me be more mindful about practicing self-care because I don't want my children to feel that. I mean, obviously they're going to at some point, I mean, because, well, hopefully if everything works out like it's supposed to, where the parent goes before the child, they'll feel that at some point. But the later that they feel that, the better, even though it really doesn't make it any different. I don't think people think, oh, well, you were 30 when you lost your parents. You were a grown adult. It doesn't matter. That's
Uh,
still your
No.
parents, and it still impacts you and affects you on a deep level, no matter what age you
Forever.
are.
well, and my
Yeah.
mother-in-law died at 12 days shy of 98,
Oh,
and
wow.
She died in my easy chair in my wife's arms. And still my wife misses her every day. She lived with us for on and off for a number of years and pretty much full time for the last 2 or 3. And God, she was a wonderful woman. She was incredible. She really was. In fact, the first chapter in Every Dog Has His Day is I wrote about her, and I tell that story because it's so meaningful.
Yeah, that's a wonderful story. And
It really is.
it's also a wonderful memory for her to have. I mean, I know it's sad, but it's also a wonderful memory knowing that, you were holding your mom when she left.
Yeah,
You
Right.
got that last moment with her.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Gave her that
Because a
comfort
lot of
too.
people, yeah, and you were comforting her when she left, and because a lot of people don't get that.
yeah.
They don't get to have
Well,
that moment.
because a lot of times they're in hospitals and they're,
Right.
hooked up to breathing machines. My mother, we had to turn off the machine on her, and she died quietly, but there was no closure, there was no closeness. It was just, it just happened. So it's a lot different when that happens. I think the lesson I take from that is Maxine always redefined my idea of aging, because I watched as she went through her 70s or her 80s, and I watched the grace that she had in doing that. She was an amazing craftsperson. She painted this thing called therum painting, which is painting on this really fine cream velvet in oils, and we have them all over our house. They're just magnificent. It's an early American craft. She made these incredible trays where they're black trays with gold leaf and all that kind of stuff. And she knitted, she embroidered, she painted oils, she did calligraphy, she did everything. So I watched as she aged, and that gave me a great thing to age. But also in death, she taught me a lot too, and it's about dying gracefully.
Mhm.
It was like I said, she was a big influence on me over the last 30 years.
I love that. Well, I wanted to talk about your book. So it's Every Dog Has Its Day. It's built on the idea that life's biggest lessons come from small everyday moments.
Shameless
Ooh, I
Why
plug.
love the
do
cover. No, I
That's
love the cover.
gorgeous.
It's
Me too.
gorgeous.
So why do you think those quieter moments often carry the most meaning?
Well, I found wood turning after the stroke, and my mother-in-law again always wanted me to be useful. I worked unbelievable hours. The only outlet that I had was playing golf, and yeah, I think you can play golf when you're retired. I haven't tried it yet, but I haven't tried retirement yet, and I don't think I'm ever going to. you know, um, what I learned in the craft is there's so many parallels between the craft of wood turning and life, and people, and the people you love, and the people you know. Wood turning, if you try to rush it, you're going to wreck the piece. And so you've got to give things its due. You've got to give things its time. You've got to give the ability to finish well, because nobody wants a piece that looks, you know, half-assed.
Yeah.
Right.
Um, and so they want to see a piece that has some craftsmanship. They want to see a piece that has some charm to it, that pays attention to the grain. And one of the things that I've learned is that sharpening is an art into itself. Sharpening the gouges that I use, and they are razor sharp. Believe me, they're run your finger across them, you're going to get cut, and they have to be that way, because if you let them go dull, you're not going to get a great cut, and you're going to get a really tired craftsman, because you're going to have to force it.
Mhm.
And so, I just that's what it's taught me is everything is in due time. And I thank my wife for buying me a lathe to begin with. I thank my mother-in-law for insisting on the craft. So one of the funny things about my mother-in-law is she would be sitting in and watching TV and knitting and doing something, or in here painting and something, and I'd finish something on the lathe, and the first person I brought it into is to give it to her. And she would
Oh,
she would turn it over and she would look at it and she'd feel it and she'd make sure that it was right. And if it was good, she told me it was good. And if it was crap, she told me it was crap. And now, since she's gone, I bring those into my wife and daughter, and they do the same thing to every piece that I make. And you just got to give it its time.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that you had such a good relationship with your mother-in-law. That's a really wonderful thing. My
Yeah.
mom and my
Not a lot of
husband.
people can say that.
Yeah. My mom loved my husband. I mean, as if he were her own. So I get that
Yeah.
with that relationship.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm really proud of the book. I enjoyed it. In fact, if you give me your address off air, I'll be happy to send you a copy. Send you both a copy.
Oh, I'd love that.
It's selling pretty well. It seems to have touched a few people. I got a call from a nephew I had sent it to, and he said the first chapter was about Grandma Dolly, and he said you hooked me, and I finished it in a day. So
Wow.
yeah.
You know it's good when you finish the book in one day. So
That's it.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes. I
Yeah.
love that.
I would definitely love to read a copy of your book for sure.
Yeah, me too.
Absolutely.
Especially since we've gotten to talk. I have to read it now.
Exactly. I'm curious about the other stories that are in the book.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think every family has one good storyteller at least. Like in my family, I consider my youngest brother the storyteller of the family. I mean, he just can tell stories all day long and knows anything and everything about everybody in the family. And yeah, so if you want to know something or hear a good story, you go to him and he's the go-to person.
My youngest brother too. That's funny.
The week before my dad died, he was dying of cancer, and so it was kind of a slow motion thing. But the week before he died, we were up visiting him, and he and I started telling jokes, and we told jokes from about 7 o'clock to about 11 o'clock, and one joke after another, and
Gosh.
just telling stories back and forth. And my wife, and he had remarried, so his wife were about wetting their pants from listening to us back and forth. And here's my dad. He's blind, and was having a difficult time. But we told jokes for 4 hours, and yeah, you got to love it.
Yeah.
Gosh, yes, you do.
Nothing beats a good story, that's for sure.
That's it.
And
Well, thank you very
that's
much.
how we go ahead.
No, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the compliment.
I was just going to say, and stories are that's how we share our history, right? And keep our memories
Yes.
and everything alive is in
Mhm.
sharing stories. People have done it since the beginning of time. That's how you pass down your knowledge and all of that from one generation to the next.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
I was just going to say, if someone's listening and is in the middle of their own uncertain transition, maybe not knowing what's next, what would you want them to hear?
It's all going to be all right. It's all going to work out. And it may not be the way that you want it to work out, but it's all going to work out no matter what, and if it doesn't work out the way you expected it to work out, probably works out better, just different.
Many
There's
times
no
it
better.
actually
There's just
does.
different. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have to ask Chip, out of the 2 adults, the 2 kids, 2 dogs and 5 cats, who handled the trip the best? I just need to know.
Well, it definitely was not the cats, and it definitely was not the boxer who damn near died. I have to say it was one of my daughters who is one of the most mellow people you ever want to meet. And I don't think she would ever get mad at anybody. And if she does get mad, oh my God, look out, because it's a corker. But I don't think I've seen her mad more than 3 times in her life. So, yeah, she handled it. She handled it very well. She was a great referee.
Like a referee.
That's awesome.
And the Cocker Spaniel was her dog, and the Cocker Spaniel is, come on, let's face it, Cockers are mellow.
Yeah, they definitely
are.
Yeah.
So would you do that journey again, Chip?
In a motorhome the next time.
There you go.
That is self-leveling and
yes.
And God, I have to tell you about the Cocker. So we get to Asheville, North Carolina, and we got the Cocker and the boxer locked in the travel trailer, and we get back to the travel trailer, and we'd gotten to be a little friendly with the people that were next to us, and the guy comes over and he says, "I want you to let you know that your dog barked all day." And we said, "Oh my God, we're so sorry. I mean, oh my God." He said, "I gotta admit, she's got stamina."
Yeah.
Yep.
That was the best I've ever heard.
I like that.
Well, this has been an absolute delight. I really enjoyed it, and you are a great host.
Thank you so much, Chip. You're right. This has been a great conversation, and it's been a beautiful reminder that not all journeys are about the destination. Sometimes they're about learning how to navigate the uncertainty, and that even in the chaos, there's meaning, growth, and sometimes grace.
Thank you, Chip, for sharing your story with us tonight. Where can listeners find out more about you and get a copy of your book?
Well, the book's on Amazon, and I've got 2 books out. There's one called Small Decisions, Big Shifts, and so that came out in October. This one came out in last week, as a matter of fact, in first week of March. And the audiobooks are on Spotify and audiobooks.com and Kobo and barnesandnoble.com. If you've got one of the subscriptions with any one of those services, you can download it for free. So the other way is I've got a website, scholzandassociates.com, SCHOLZ and Associates all spelled out. Here's the freebie that I've got with that website. If you go to the website, one of the tabs is books, and under that books, it says, "What's Chip reading?" And in there's about 140 books that I've read that I've done reviews on, and you can just, it's free. You can go and look up books that you want to read, and there's a review on each one, a couple of paragraphs. They're certainly not long literary reviews. They're just 3 paragraphs or maybe even 2 paragraphs. And so, that's been one of the most popular things with my website.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. That's great. Yeah, for people that read and maybe you're curious about a book but not sure, then yeah, having a review from somebody that's already read the book is awesome to help you figure out if you want to read it for sure or not.
That's right. And not everybody's going to agree with my reviews, but hey, what good is a critic anyway, right?
It's your opinion.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right.
Everybody's got opinions, and
well, I'm glad you didn't say the other part of that.
Yeah, I'm not going to. So thank you everyone for being here tonight. We will include Chip's information in the show notes and also on our website, traveltimestories.com, where each of our guests have their own dedicated page that includes all of their contact information. So take a moment and check it out.
And until next time, keep traveling your story and keep making memories for life, everyone.
Thanks, guys.